It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL podcast. It is Tuesday, and that means you got me, Luke Braun, NFL, and Ross at Ross Jackson, NOLA on Twitter. We are both on the road. It is camp season. I'm staying in Minnesota covering Vikings camp. Ross will be at Saints camp, and that means we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. My Vikings are going through a little bit of a moment right now. We'll talk about that. And a little bit of the first-person perspective, since I was actually able to go there, watch, check out the vibe of the team. There's also some more developments in the Carson Wentz stuff. Bo and Evan talked about that on yesterday's podcast if you want to go check that out. But now we know that Carson Wentz is getting surgery. There's a couple other little nuggets that are worth mentioning. We would also want to touch on here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Also later, we'll talk to Vinnie Iyer about rookies in fantasy and who you should be going after, who's going to get those opportunities that you can maybe get real late in your redraft, or if you're doing rookie drafts, you should be all over it. This is Locked On NFL. And I guess let's touch on a couple of things. So Devonta Smith suffered a minor little injury in Eagles camp, and Ian Rappaport tweeted it out, said there's no cause for concern, which is the most concerning thing you can possibly say to Eagles fans.
Just the worst.
So there's also Kyle Shanahan saying that he would be very surprised, quote unquote, if Trey Lance started week 1. So that means we might be getting a little bit of the Jimmy Garoppolo show going on.
So you're telling me there's a chance. Just because they'll be very surprised doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That's all I'm saying.
Kyle Shanahan, he who has never lied to the media. But let's focus on the Carson Wentz thing, because I think this is the thing that really has the most impact going on right now on its team, which is the Colts losing Carson Wentz. So when we talked about it yesterday, it seemed like we weren't sure if he was going to get surgery or maybe it would heal in time. And it was uncertain whether or not Carson Wentz would be ready for the season. But now he has gotten the surgery. He's out like 5 to 12 weeks, definitely not ready for the season. And it seems like the Colts are ready to roll with Jacob Eason for those weeks. Going to be a really interesting season to see just how far the Colts can get if they can limp through that first part of the season, get Carson Wentz back, and maybe make a run.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be tough, and especially to have that wide of berth in terms of that timeline, 5 to 12 weeks. I mean, then you're maybe missing a guy for the first week. If not, then you're not seeing him potentially until 7 weeks later. Like, that is a very wide margin. And so that a little bit of panic when it comes to Indianapolis Colts fans and Philadelphia Eagles fans too, honestly, because Philadelphia Eagles are, they have
they've got a stake in this.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to hit 75% of his play time and hit the playoffs in order for him to be able to do it.
Like more perfectly centered around.
Right.
Like,
Isn't that just
exactly
the worst?
50-50 if you miss a quarter of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's tough. I mean, it's really, really tough for both sides of this, but most importantly, very tough for Carson Wentz, who got out of the situation that he wanted to get out of in Philly, lands in a place that looked like it was ready to support him. And I kept saying, like, I don't have a ton of confidence in Carson Wentz, but if there was any place that was going to work for him, it was going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And maybe that just got cut short by at least a little bit in terms of the momentum that he could be getting at the beginning of the season. It's kind of a heartbreaker.
Yeah, I already went on to BetOnline AG and bet Colts under 7.5 way ago because I didn't really believe in what they were building with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Obviously, this gets a lot shakier now, but I'm so interested in how Jacob Eason does, because Jacob Eason, to me, I remember doing the draft work on him back in 2020, and he reminded me a lot of Kirk Cousins in the way that he had a lot of talent, he had a lot of ability, there's accuracy, and it was all there. Yeah. And then things would kind of fall apart, and he would sort of respond poorly to pressure, or respond poorly to other like kind of things where you need to kind of go off script. And that I always kind of thought of Jacob Eason as a mini Kirk Cousins. That kind of got into my brain a little bit, because this is the paradigm through which I view the world. Sure. But I'm so interested to see, now he's in his second year, to see if he can actually put something together. And look, if it's like 2 or 3 weeks, yeah, I don't think you should go panic trade for Marcus Mariota, because the Raiders will bend you over the table for that one.
Sure.
But if it's 7, if he's out for half the season, are you going to be sitting there at 1-6 and you get Carson Wentz back and go, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
and the Colts are kind of committed to winning now with him, and they've got this roster. Every year that goes now, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to keep that band together. So they're in such a tough spot.
Yeah, they really are. And as you and I have observed before, in terms of, I think it was one of our very first Locked On NFL episodes together, actually, the idea of a quarterback sitting behind a rookie quarterback sitting behind a quarterback for a year doesn't necessarily always translate to success. Either the quarterback's going to be good or they're not. Right. So whatever Jacob Eason you were going to get. Ready. Yeah, exactly. So whatever Jacob Eason you were going to get is what you are now going to get potentially here in 2021. And for what we can see from, I believe it was Chris Mortensen who tweeted it out, they're not, the Colts aren't looking to go out there and spend to trade on, a guy like Nick Foles or anything like that, at least at this time. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all this all pans out for the Indianapolis Colts, for the Philadelphia Eagles. But actually, now that I think about it, might be an 85% play time that he has to hit. But either way, I mean, not great news really for either of these sides. Yeah, and then of course the AFC South as a whole.
Right, and the thing about the draft incentive, the conditional, the reason that was part of the trade is because Carson Wentz has an injury history, and so this is the Colts playing around that. And so if the draft pick is reduced, that's them getting rewarded for being prudent in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Protect yourself. Always protect yourself. That's the way that we always want to look at it when it comes to these trades, particularly for those injury-prone guys. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at your Minnesota Vikings. A lot going on. We're going to stay in the quarterback situation, but conversation a little bit more sensitive as we turn the page over to the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But, Luke, you had mentioned that you had already gone over to BetOnline.ag and taken the under on the Indianapolis Colts win total. If you feel differently about that, you can head over to BetOnline.ag and take the same bet, take a different bet. Under 9? Either way, I don't blame you. It could be under 6, and I might still think to take it.
Well, honestly. Now I'm feeling great.
Really, I'm not feeling very great about the Indianapolis Colts right now. But maybe you are, or maybe you're feeling really good about another team, or you're really down on another team. Win totals all over the NFL, and of course, a whole bunch of bets, odds, props, things that you can get in on all across the world of sports, esports, reality television. I mean, just everything that you can imagine and more over at BetOnline.ag. The Olympics, of course, absolutely. Still got another week of that to go. So a ton to get involved in. You can check them out, BetOnline.ag, and don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, all one word, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
Okay, so the Vikings are going through a moment.
Yeah, this is tough.
We should talk about it. Because, okay, so the actual Vikings impact of this and what Jake Browning is doing and all that is super interesting, right? Because there's this undrafted quarterback getting this opportunity at a backup job and maybe carving his play. Super interesting stuff, all great stuff. I talk about it a ton on Locked On Vikings if people want to go check that out. But I think the national angle on this is also very interesting. So if you have been living under a rock, you haven't seen any of this. So basically the Vikings quarterback room got hit with a COVID high-risk exposure problem, not unlike what happened to the Broncos last year, that game Kendall Hinton played, where there was one positive case in the room, and because they all share a room together, they're all considered high-risk, close contacts. And that means that they all have to quarantine for a certain amount of time, unless you're vaccinated, and only one guy is vaccinated in that room because only one guy's been at practice, so we know now. Kirk Cousins, unvaccinated. Kellen Mond, confirmed unvaccinated by Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune. And Nate Stanley, who also is the fourth quarterback in that room out of Iowa, he is also unvaccinated. Jake Browning is the only guy who's been able to play. So the Vikings have been working out some other random guys. Case Cookus came in. They claimed Danny Etling off of waivers from the Seahawks. So they're bringing in guys. But the I think guinea pig moment of all of this, and if you are not a fan of the Vikings, what you're looking at here is how the league handles this, if they handle it at all. And what you're seeing is the Vikings just kind of have to deal. If your guys aren't vaccinated, they get a COVID thing. You got to go through the protocols. You just have to deal. Nobody's going to come to the rescue. Nobody's going to reschedule your game. And I think that was kind of always the case. There's a lot of bluster about the Titans getting a game rescheduled, and the Broncos didn't when they had their problem. But the Broncos had contained their outbreak into just the quarterback room. And you got to quarantine all those guys, and that stinks. You got to play with Kendall Hinton. But you didn't present a danger to the team across from you. And the Titans were not contained. They presented a danger to the team across from them. So in a way, doing a worse job containing your outbreak, they were kind of rewarded for, and I get that feels unfair. But it's not about fairly ensuring who's out there. It's about ensuring you can put a good team out there. It's about making sure you don't present a danger of spreading COVID-19 to the other team. And now that over 80% of the league is vaccinated, I don't think you're going to get that kind of outbreak anymore like you had with the Titans where, half the team goes down. I think you're going to get situations where if your quarterbacks aren't vaccinated and your third string dude comes down with COVID-19 or tests positive or whatever, you might lose your starting quarterback for a crucial game. And what if this happens in January? What happens here? And from what it looks like, the league is saying, good luck.
Yeah. Look, this is the thing, right? Like, I mean, the idea is for everybody to show up and try to win these games. And it's hard to do that if you're unavailable. And if you're unavailable, how does that cost the rest of your team? So on and so forth. Plus the present danger that you mentioned as well that comes with all of this inherently.
And that's what the league needs to be worried about.
That's the biggest thing. And so I think that, when it comes down to, we saw this last year, the NFL not willing to make any type of competitive decisions based around the health and safety of players and the health and safety protocols, that were already set forth to sort of help manage the situation that we're all in as best as they could. And this is where all these head coaches across the NFL have been asking this question. And you've seen them a ton during all these pressers saying, okay, this happens now, but what happens if this happens, just as you mentioned, in the middle of the season, in December when you're fighting for a playoff spot, or worse, in January, February, where you could potentially be trying to fight your way to a Super Bowl? I mean, there's a lot of concessions here that can't be made by these head coaches that are trying to, win these football games, and by the players as well that are also interested in winning these football games.
Right. And if you are a player who wants to win, who does everything for your team, if you're a player who got vaccinated because it gives your team a better chance to win because it gives you a better chance to be available, and then somebody else didn't do that, and then you lose a game because they didn't do that, I shudder to think what happens in the locker room. I'm very curious to see what's happening in the Vikings locker room right now. They're keeping everything under wraps. If you ask anybody, they say, oh, it's all love. We all know, you can agree, you can disagree, blah, blah, blah. And they're not, airing their dirty laundry or anything like that. But I sure am curious to know what everybody thinks of Kirk Cousins missing out on training camp. That means you have a less accurate quarterback throwing to you. Every wide receiver suffers for this. Yeah. And, because you have the same guy who's Jake Browning, undrafted. He's not that accurate, throwing you balls that, you can't work on your catching, your timing. Rookies like Amir Smith-Marset and undrafted rookies working on their timings with guys. You can't do any of that. And that's just the training camp impact. Imagine setting up, Saints versus Bucks, division on the line. And, Thursday you find out you're not going to have your quarterback. And I think, again, from the national angle, whatever team you're a fan of, if you're worried about this, you're right to be worried about this. This is going to happen to someone, and it's a matter of when it happens, how bad it is, and how important those guys are.
Man, it's going to be really, really interesting to watch how teams continue to navigate all of this going into the 2021 NFL season. And obviously, it's a tough subject to transition into, transition out of, but as we move on, we have to move on. And we just got to have to see how this goes along. So I guess we'll just go to fantasy football next with Vinnie Iyer, who's going to come through and help us try to dominate our fantasy leagues, assuming that we're able to have a season.
Protect your immune system, protect your car.
I know. Like, how do you even transition out of this? But I'll tell you what, I am a risk-averse person. I will say that. And so a part of being risk-averse, apparently, unlike, as you tweeted out on Twitter earlier today, unlike Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is not risk-averse on the field or off it.
It's very clear. So I guess with that being the case, I don't like to be risk-averse with my vehicle either. And so I always try to make sure my vehicle's in tip-top shape, whether it's your daily driver or you're rebuilding a classic. You can get every part, piece, accessory, whatever it is that you need, whatever it is that you want, and even more over at rockauto.com. They have something for every single make, model, year, whatever it is that you need. They've got options across all those parts, pieces, and accessories as well, so that you make sure that you're not spending a ton of money to get what you need for your vehicle. So go and check them out at rockauto.com. Don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you by writing Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
All right, everybody, continuing onward here. It's time for the Tuesday Fantasy Forum, and that means we have Vinnie Iyer in. to talk a little bit about fantasy, talk a little bit about rookies. So here's the thing. Ross and I are in a dynasty football league with a bunch of other Locked On hosts. Bo Brock just joined from Locked On Cardinals, Jake Liskow, Locked On Bengals, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons. A bunch of us, we're all in dynasty. And Ross and I would like to cheat and get some great rookie advice for you ahead of our rookie draft, which is coming up. And I'm the commissioner, so I allow it. And I'm abusing that power to get some advice from you, Vinnie Iyer. Tell me let's talk a bit about rookies. Who should be the 1-1?
Well, I think it's very exciting this year, the rookie class, because you have three guys that I think that stand out that you're going to see in the league for a long time: Najee Harris, Jamar Chase, and Kyle Pitts. I mean, these guys are going to produce immediately. I mean, I have no doubt about it. I mean, it just the physical talent of these three guys and the situations they're in as well. We know that's just as important as a rookie coming in. Jamar Chase, I mean, we know he's going to hook it up with Joe Burrow, and they're going to just light it up together again. It's going to be like they just skipped over 1 year.
Ross is just
I love it. I love it.
And we know it.
LSU prosperity. Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a beast. And then no Julio Jones. They're going to throw to him and Calvin Ridley nonstop in that offense. And then you look at Najee Harris. You look at that guy's legs. He's going to roll over some people. They're going to give him the ball. I mean, you saw the way the Steelers were last year. They're actually one of the fewest frequent running teams last year. That's going to change a lot. That was a big problem.
That's Tomlin wants to be,
yeah. Mike Tomlin wants to complement that defense. He likes one guy to carry the ball. And this guy is just underrated as a receiver as well. So these three guys stand out. And the one guy that I want more people to draft right now, I don't care what Kyle Shanahan is saying, you want a piece of Trey Lance as much as possible because
it'll be time.
It's going to happen sooner rather than later. I mean, he's surprised about things he's doing already right now. And I know they're trying to be diplomatic and say Jimmy Garoppolo is going to beat out any rookie when he's healthy. That's not going to be the case in a few weeks here. So even if he misses a few games, you get another guy in there, plug him in, have some streaming options. Trey Lance, though, for long term, I mean, he's the guy that I want. I mean, that offense is just so good for quarterbacks. So, yeah, Trevor Lawrence is going to be worthy as well as being a guy that you're going to stash on your bench. But Trey Lance, you just look at all the weapons there and the offense and what he can do running as an element as well. I don't think it's going to be a way to limit him anytime soon. It's just not going to happen here. So Justin Fields, we'll have to see. I think I kind of unfortunately believe Matt Nagy that they're going to stick with Andy Dalton. But Kyle Shanahan, I think he's just trying to kind of be coy about it. But if you look at it, if you look at any of the beat reports out there with our crew there, Locked On 49ers, anyone is going to tell you that Trey Lance has blown the doors off. And don't forget about the other Trey out there, Trey Sermon, because I think with Trey Lance, those two guys are going to be very productive in the centerpiece of the offense. We know Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are not going to stay healthy. So you got these two guys.
It could be a committee thing too,
Yeah, it could be a committee. We know, but whoever's the primary guy for the 49ers in that system is going to be very productive. So it could be the Trey and Trey show pretty soon, and no one would be surprised.
No, not at all. And okay, what about another player that I've sort of been curious about, but feel like I should be pumping the brakes on? And maybe we could talk about some other options that maybe don't rush to draft these guys in that rookie draft. What about Travis Etienne over in Jacksonville?
This is a hard read here because I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. I mean, you would just connect the dots and say Darrell Bevel and Brian Schottenheimer. You'd say they're going to have some connection to what they did in Seattle, which means run, and
by
set
committee.
up Trevor Lawrence to throw deep. And that's what they want to do. And look at James Robinson. I don't know how sold they are. I mean, they inherited James Robinson. He was great in the other scheme. So I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to give Etienne the ball. And I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to buy into they want to run. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is making some great throws out there in practice. We see highlights every day. They've got a lot of speed at receiver, DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, and I don't think their defense is going to be good enough for them to stick with the running game all the time. So I'm a little concerned with Travis Etienne there, but in terms of the upside, playing with his college quarterback, just his role in the receiving game alone, I think I like him a lot more in half-point and full PPR formats at this point, where I'm a little just proceeding with caution with Etienne in other formats.
Are there any other running? So this is the struggle that I have with rookie drafts is after the like first round guys, I kind of struggle to divorce my fantasy rankings from my actual draft rankings. You know, I had certain opinions about this 5th round guy or this 6th round guy that I could go look up my draft notes for, but that's not really how you engage with the fantasy, because now you have to consider what team they're on. Right. So are there any other, I mean, we're talking 3rd, 4th, 5th round rookie draft guys that are names to watch that may potentially be available?
Well, I think Michael Carter, you better get on him low. Hopefully you're drafting a little bit ahead of his value rising up, but everyone's on Javonte Williams, and it makes a lot of sense that the Broncos are excited to have him and want to have him there ahead of Melvin Gordon. But I mean, Michael Carter over is sitting here with the Jets. I mean, look at the competition with the Jets. It's not very good right now. Right. It's Tevin Coleman, it's LaMichael Pirine, it's Ty Johnson. These guys are not going to get the job done in this offense. You look at Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, very similar style runners, very similar schemes. And you just look at who's going to give you some explosiveness, and you look at the Michael LaFleur running game. I think you're going to see that a lot from Michael Carter in this offense. So I like him a lot. Another guy I would not sleep on later, also wearing green, is Kenneth Gainwell of the Eagles, just because I'm not completely sold that they're sold on Miles Sanders in a completely full-time role. They also like Gainwell because he's got a lot of things that he can do that are very much similar to Sanders. So I could see this being an even split and very productive, and maybe develop to the point where Gainwell really gets a bigger role here in relation to Sanders.
I love it. Look at us, Luke. We're getting all the inside information. Bo Brock, Jake Lisco, y'all better watch your backs, because Luke and I are coming to clean up. Nobody tell Kate.
Nobody tell Kate we did this.
We're coming to clean up in the rookie drafts thanks to Vinnie Iyer, at Vinnie Iyer on Twitter. And you can clean up in your rookie drafts as well as your redraft leagues as well by checking out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast every Monday through Friday. Vinnie, thanks so much for your help, and thanks so much for joining us here on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
Thanks, Luke and Ross.
All right, y'all. We'll be back with you for another episode of Locked On NFL tomorrow. Tony Wiggins, James Rapine, helping you stay up to date with everything that you need to know around the NFL. Keep you up to date with all the biggest stories from around the league. Thank you very much for being here. For Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. I'm Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. We'll see you again on Tuesday, but Locked On NFL will see you again tomorrow here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.